Hi, I'm Liz Rice, and I just wanted to pop in today and show how Tetragon can detect file access, even if it's using the IO U-ring mechanism. There's been some reports recently about how if security tools rely on syscall monitoring, then IO U-ring can bypass those system calls and file access wouldn't necessarily be detected. But the good news is that with Tetragon, provided you have the right policy in place, we can detect those file access events. So let me start by just showing you, I have a little alias set up that I'm going to be using quite a lot, which is going to allow me to run Tetragon commands inside the container where it's running. So you're going to see me doing things like this, tracing policy list. And right now we're not running with any tracing policies. We've just got the default Tetragon policy, which will detect processes starting and stopping. And if I want to see those, I can do get events, and we will get output in the human readable compact form. And then in this window, I am going to run the proof of concept that's been written to show file access, writing to a file using IO U-ring. And if I run that program now, we can see it, the process being executed and exiting, but that's all we're detecting with the default policies because Tetragon only detects process entry and exit by default. So we're going to need to add a policy if we want to actually detect the write to that particular file. And there are some sample policies that you can see from the Getting Started documentation in Tetragon. One of them is for file monitoring. So let's take a look at that. And I will confess it is quite a complex policy. We're not going to go through everything, but we'll take a look at the key details. So this is using a K-probe attached to a function called security file permission. And this is a kernel function that's used to check whether if something is trying to read or write to a file, is that operation permitted? And this function gets called regardless of what mechanism is being used to do that file access. So whether it's a read system call or a write system call or even the IO U-ring mechanism, all of those paths will ultimately result in this security file permission function being called, and Tetragon's hooking into that function. But it's also looking at the arguments to that function, which include the file that's being accessed. And it does, or the policy defines some filtering so that we're only going to report on what the policy defines as sensitive files. So the first set here, there are prefix matching. So anything that starts with /boot in its path name or /root/.ssh, all of these prefixes will be matched. Then further down, we've got a set of postfix matches. So this means anything, any path that ends .bashrc or .profile, .login, that's going to be picked up by this policy. So for example, the files in /home/Liz .profile or .bashrc or the equivalents for any other user on this machine, they'll get picked up by this policy. There's more in this policy, but I think that's enough to give you an idea how it works and what's in there. One thing that isn't in there is any attempt to capture file access to /temp. And I'll just show that that's true by grepping for temp. So even if we applied that policy, it wouldn't pick up this particular write event. So what I've done is I've created a similar policy, but I've added the prefix temp shadow in all the places, all the relevant places in that policy. so that if I apply this policy, we should pick up that write access, even though it's using IOU ring. And I need to add that policy. Oh, it's TP add, tracing policy add. And this should be mounted into the container at Tetragon policy. Oops, spell policies right. And I called it file monitoring temp YAML. Okay, so that's been added. We'll just look at it, make sure it's in place. There it is, it's enabled. So let's run get events again. And if we run this proof of concept program and write to that file, we should see it detected. And there we go. We've got the process entry and exit as before, but we've also detected the write to that file that is now being considered sensitive by that policy. So I hope that shows Tetragon is very much capable of detecting file access, even if it's using IOU ring. You just have to have the right policies in place. Thanks and see you soon.